Good afternoon, good evening, and good morning, wherever you are on this amazing planet. My name is Katana Malinowski, and I am the host of Katana Malinowski, the People's Champ podcast for the masses. I want to welcome you here today. This is a special edition in honor of the late Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. I am going to be reading excerpts from his speech, and it is my hope that it brings hope to the masses. Um, this is a somber day. We have a convicted felon who is now occupying the seat of the presidency, who is vowed to do a great deal of injustice to a lot of people, potentially to all people, and he has the potential to do a lot of damage worldwide. This is a shift that's happening not just in our country, but around the world. And on this day, I would like to bring a little bit of hope back into our world by sharing the excerpts from the late Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. So here I go. I have a dream. Speech by the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. at the March on Washington, 1963. Excerpts. I'm happy to join with you today in what will go down in history as the greatest demonstration for freedom in the history of our nation. 50 years ago, a great American in whose symbolic shadow we stand today signed the Emancipation Proclamation. This momentous decree is a great beacon of light of hope to millions of Negro slaves who had been seared in the flames of withering injustice. It came as a joyous daybreak to end the long night of their captivity. But 100 years later, the Negro is still not free. 100 years later, the life of the Negro is still badly crippled by the manacles of segregation and the chains of discrimination. 100 years later, the Negro lives on a lonely island of poverty in the midst of a vast ocean of material prosperity. 100 years later, the Negro is still languished in the corners of American society and finds himself in exile in his own land. So we've come here today to dramatize a shameful condition. In a sense, we've come to our nation's capital to cash a check. When the architects of our republic wrote the magnificent words of the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, they were signing a promissory note to which every American was to fall heir. This note was a promise that all men, yes, black men as well as white men, would be guaranteed the unalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We must forever conduct our struggle on the higher plane of dignity and discipline. We must not allow our creative protests to degenerate into physical violence. The marvelous new militancy which has engulfed the Negro community must not lead us to distrust all white people. For many of our white brothers, as evidenced by their presence here today, have come to realize that their destiny is tied up with our destiny. We cannot walk alone, and as we walk, we must make the pledge that we shall always march ahead. We cannot turn back. There are those who are asking the devotees of civil rights, when will you be satisfied? We can never be satisfied as long as the Negro is the victim of the unspeakable horrors of police brutality. We can never be satisfied as long as our bodies, heavily with the fatigue of travel, cannot gain lodging in the motels of the highways and the hotels of the cities. We cannot be satisfied as long as the Negro's basic mobility is from a smaller ghetto to a larger one. We can never be satisfied as long as our children are stripped of their adulthood and robbed of their dignity by signs stating for whites only. We cannot be satisfied as long as the Negro in Mississippi cannot vote and the Negro in New York believes he has nothing for which to vote. No, no, we are not satisfied, and we will not be satisfied until justice rolls down like waters and righteousness, like a mighty stream. I say to you today, my friends, though, even though we face the difficulties of today and tomorrow, I still have a dream. It's a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up, live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that one day, even the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with the heat of injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream that my four little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream. I have a dream that one day in Alabama, with its vicious racists, with its governor having his lips dripping with the words of interposition and nullification, one day, right there in Alabama, little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers. I have a dream today. This will be the day when all of God's children will be able to sing with new meaning. My country, 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. Land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrim's pride. From every mountainside let freedom ring. And if America is to be a great nation, this must become true. So let freedom ring from the prodigious hilltops of New Hampshire. Let freedom ring from the mighty mountains of New York. Let freedom ring from the heightening Alleghenies of Pennsylvania. Let freedom ring from the snow-capped Rockies of Colorado. Let freedom ring from the curvaceous slopes of California. But not only that, let freedom ring from Stone Mountain of Georgia. Let freedom ring from Lookout Mountain of Tennessee. Let freedom ring from every hill and molehill of Mississippi, from every mountainside. Let freedom ring. When we allow freedom to ring, when we let it ring from every city and every hamlet, from every state and every city, we will be able to speed up that day when all of God's children, black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, will be able to join hands and sing in the words of the old Negro spiritual. Free at last, free at last. Great God Almighty, we are free at last. Reprinted by arrangement with the heirs to the estate of Martin Luther King Jr., care of Writers House as the proprietor, New York, New York. Copyright 1963, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., renewed 1991, Coretta Scott King. This this is such an important time for us to come together and to make it to the other side of what can only be characterized as, shit river. We've got a lot of stuff in front of us. We've got a lot of ugliness in front of us. This is a time I ask each and every one of you, including myself, to sit and reflect. Are there any truths in what the people that are performing these injustices are saying is lurking in the shadows within ourselves? Do we hold any of those truths within us? If we do, we have an opportunity right now to change that. We can. We always can. We can always make a new choice. That's the brilliance of a new day and a new moment. So we can always make new choices. There's a lot of ugliness. There's a lot of ugly people. There's a lot of injustice is the only word I can fathom to say at the moment. And I feel deeply about what I just read to you. I'm reminded of Nelson Mandela. I'm reminded of the late Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. on a regular basis because their words ring true to me in my soul. As a woman in this world and in the American society in particular, I do not feel empowered in the way that any autonomous human being should be. And it is our inalienable right. Our founding fathers worded everything from the point of view of the man. It's always been a patriarchal society, and it doesn't have to be that way anymore. Moving forward, women and all people of color can walk hand in hand, elbow to elbow, working with each other, living in each other's neighborhoods, sharing the dreams that inherently we all seek. Happiness, love, liberty, they're attainable. And they're attainable if we fight for them. Now, as the excerpts from the speech that I shared stated, is that, we the preference is to not have extreme violence. That will be possible if and only if we make that possible. We need the people that are currently in place of offices, from the Pentagon to our military to the White House, Congress, everybody at all levels, our sheriffs, our police departments, everyday Americans. It's up to us to make that possible. I took an oath of office, the same oath of office that the president takes, minus those extra words about being president and having that extra obligation to defend the Constitution of the United States, the people of the United States. It means something very, very important because that promise, that oath, is our call to action. I am so grateful to be here. I am so grateful to have this forum to communicate with people, to talk with people, to learn about people, to learn about everybody, and to help get the message out, to help support so many of our other independent media people because we are in a really bad place with our media. They are equally as guilty as that convicted felon for what is happening today. I am saying that out loud. Our media is equally as guilty. The media of the United States, every single last one of them that take a paycheck to sit there day in and day out and create discourse and create the personification of people so that they can make a profit. So they don't have to be concerned with what really happens out here. They're just as much to blame about splitting us and dividing us as the very people that are doing it. There are many of us in the independent space that are taking this opportunity to keep our fellow Americans and the world informed about the realities of what's really going on as long as we can, as long as our voices aren't smothered and thwarted and oppressed and pressed down into the dark corners of the ugliness that the United States has become. We can move this forward. Each one of us can pledge today, tomorrow, the next moment we think about it, to stand side by side with our fellow Americans that want to move this country forward in the most positive and empowering way to bring light and love into those dark corners, in those dark spaces, and to show those that have chosen a different path that this isn't how it has to be. You can have everything you need, you can have everything you want without it being at the expense of other people. Our government has done a good job at dividing us and believing that everybody around us are the villains. Oh, well, if they get a freedom, then I lose a freedom. That's just not the case. Oh, well, if they get something and I'm having something that I'm not getting, it's because of those people that are receiving something. That's just not the case. It's not that black and white. There's so many shades of gray and so many areas in between, and our system is complex and could really use some simplification to it. And we can change that if we come together and we push forward. We got a long way to go. And I know that we can do it together. I care. I love all people. I love my fellow Americans. And I do my best to understand the people that chose to support that convicted felon because I know that it comes from a place of need. It comes from a place of lacking, that something scared them. Something was missing in their life that they actually believed that other people were taking or threatening in some way, shape, or form. And that's where I'd like to invite conversations about that and help people understand that no, this country and the world has enough for everybody if we allow it, if we support systems and structures that allow that to grant people all access. I don't want to see anybody not have access. I've been a victim of that myself. I have a master's degree in legal studies with an emphasis in constitutional law, which means that I had to have other degrees to get here. And I still have to rely on systems to make it through day to day because I have not had access to opportunities. That's so important. We all need opportunities. Some of us will be prepared, some of us won't be prepared. And that's the realities of the world. And we can help people be prepared for opportunities that arise. There's no reason why we can't do this, and we can't do this together. So my service today is in service to all of you. I share the late Reverend Martin Luther King Jr.'s speech excerpts because I hope it lands in a way that warms your heart that gives you just that little bit of fire in your belly that says, you know what, we can do this. You know what, we do have the ability to make this different. I also want to add that I'm holding back tears because I was given an opportunity to go to Washington, D.C. I've seen how it operates, and I walked the mall and I walked to the Lincoln Memorial. And when I got to the end of the reflection pool, the tears came. The energy of knowing that I stood where so many stood before me. And then when I got to the Lincoln Memorial itself and I stood where the late Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. gave this speech, and I saw that grand statue of Abraham Lincoln and the words on the wall, I cried. And then I just sat there for hours and watched and looked and observed and felt the feels of all those who came before and the hopes and dreams that they all had. Yes, there's been a lot of lies, and yes, there's been a lot of deceit and injustice. Humans are definitely imperfect, and that's okay. It's not our imperfections that hold us back. It's the belief that those imperfections are a one and done and that we can't change them. We can. We can make choices every day, every minute of every day to make a different choice. I will say today, one of the last things I would like to share is that I want to say I'm sorry to any human being of color that any of my forefathers, my blood relations, held in held in slavery. I have family members that came from Latvia and were white slaves. Not many people know that. That is a reality for some, and not many people are willing to admit that. But I want to say I'm sorry for whatever part that my bloodline played in that. My only hope is that you can accept my apology with as heartfelt as it is. And that despite any misguided judgments I may have had along the way growing up, that is not who I am today. I have grown inside and out, more inside. There's no right or wrong as a human. We do what we can. We do the best we can with what we know. Today we know better. Let's do better. I send you all my love. And if you really are enjoying what you're getting so far out of this channel, please like and subscribe. I would love to have you join me. Have an amazing rest of your day.